Good. I just had a little bit of lunch there. So it is 2 o'clock. Welcome everybody to our webinar today. We are on covering letters. So a little bit of a varied session for you today on covering letters, because we just need to go through it. We've done CVs, we've done LinkedIn. Covering letters is the next step that people have asked for. And I want to go into detail on placements today because of Helen's experience, just to give you a little bit of an extra insight into placements, what they mean and why potentially you should be doing them. Does anybody want to write in the chat box if you've done one of these webinars before? It's always good to see regular names, as we already go over 41 attendees here already, which is great. I'll put a few things in the chat box, guys, by the way, just in terms of different links that you can be signing up to and making sure that you're getting the most out of our support. So we'll introduce Helen in a second. Helen, can you see my screen and is it all working okay?
It is, yeah, thank you.
Surely good. And let me just make sure I can see you there, Helen. Yeah, I can. Good stuff. Good stuff. So I'll go through the agenda. So firstly, how to communicate. Those of you who are experts and been on every day, you don't need to worry about that. Introductions from our panelists today, and then we'll look at the main content of covering letters. And I want to make today quite chatty, so you guys can put up your hands, speak throughout the webinar. You can also type in your questions, of course, but just ask different questions because this is a session for you. Helen and I both know what covering letters are all about. You might argue they're CVs and covering letters. No one gets excited about them potentially, but you just got to get them done to get to where you want to get to. And then Q&A, where you can ask maybe different things around the placement side of things as well as anything else you want to ask myself or Helen. Communication, you've got your chat box if you want to just ask. Chat box isn't for questions. Chat box for anything extra ordinary. Q&A, put your questions in the Q&A box, and then we'll make sure we try to get to them. But if you raise your hand, we'll come to you before people in the Q&A box. And I'll generally do that a little bit after some of the content. But for today, I think you can raise your hand at any time. What that means is that it just means that we'll come to your question next, because it's nice to have you speak to us in person. For example, yesterday we did a careers workshop in law. I think we had to leave about 20 questions in the Q&A box because we just didn't get to them in time. So you guys know who I am, obviously Chris, and you might see my background keeps changing. I've been in the office, cycling into the office over quarantine, but now I'm back into my house at the moment in Balham in London. So there's some gym equipment that I use now and again, which is quite nice. But yeah, so I'm Chris, and Helen, just to start off with, over to you in terms of your role at IBM, a little bit about yourself, please, Helen.
So I'm Helen. I've worked for IBM for a long time, but for the last 5 years, I've been looking after placement students at IBM. So we have school leavers that come to us for their gap year before they've decided what they want to do. And then some of them go on to their apprenticeships, and some of them go off to do different education or other types of jobs or travelling. And I look after our university placement scheme students who are doing what's called a sandwich year, where they do their first 2 years of education, then they do a year in industry. So they pick an employer and work with us for a year, and then they go back and they do their final year at university. So I do everything from reading the applications and doing the attractions bit, where you go out to the schools and you talk to people. And then I manage people throughout the course of their whole year, mentor them, get them choosing the right career path, and then we release them back into their chosen direction. And hopefully they come back to us as an apprentice or as a graduate.
Brilliant. And Helen, what about placements? So placements, so you've got apprenticeships, you've got placements when you're at university, and you've got graduates, and I know you've got a gap year scheme. Roughly, sort of how many numbers are we talking that IBM take on? I'm not sure if you know. But...
Oh, I do. So we take on about 200 placement students a year, of which between 20 and 30 are school leavers. They do exactly the same jobs. Doesn't matter whether you're coming fresh from school or from university, because what we're looking for is potential. Nobody will have the skills, nobody will have done the job. So as far as we're concerned, you've got just as much right whether you're a school leaver or at university.
Cool. And that's having 1 year at IBM, whether you're at uni or finishing school, is that right?
Yep. That's correct, yeah.
And then if you're at university, is that in year 2 or year 3 of your sandwich course? Or
Year 3.
year 3? Okay, good stuff. Okay, brilliant. And what about you personally then, Helen? What's your story of getting to IBM? Did you go to university or not, I wonder?
No, I didn't. So I started working the day after my final GCSE, quite a few years ago, and I had a few different jobs. I went straight to work for NatWest in the city. That was really good. But then I ended up working for another computer company. And then the project I was working on finished. I took my CV, I walked into reception and I said, I'd like an interview, please. Rather shockingly. And they employed me the following week. And I've been with IBM ever since.
Wow, fantastic.
Yeah, I'm not too sure that works anymore. But it's about knowing what you've got, and I think that's why the covering letter is really important. And application forms and how you present yourself is just so key.
Okay, brilliant. And we've just had Catherine join us from Pathway CTM because I think I'm going to have to leave this webinar slightly early. We've just found out. But Catherine, do you just want to introduce yourself? If that's okay?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Catherine. So I work on our employer side of the team at Pathway, but some of you might have spoken to me over the last few days supporting you with your applications. But good to see you on.
Yeah, we just had something come in which I might have to attend to, but then I'll try and jump on straight after, but not till past, so we're absolutely fine. So Helen, what we've done so far then, we've been doing this for a couple of weeks now since schools have basically stopped. Obviously people aren't going to schools or colleges. We looked at CVs to start with, just getting things down onto a CV template. Then we moved on to LinkedIn. What's your view on CVs and LinkedIn? Basically what we're saying is that it should really be the same sort of information. CV, your LinkedIn, your first stage of the application process, it should all pretty much be the same sort of information about yourself. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Keep it continuous, keep it clean, keep it very relevant. And if your employer at Sainsbury's read what you've written about yourself, it's got to be true and authentic, because people do check.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of LinkedIn then, so you mentioned a few things when we were speaking earlier. What sort of advantages do you think that a young person looking to get their way into the world of work can utilize LinkedIn, such as yourself, for example, who's in charge of bringing people into IBM?
You can not stalk people because that's just wrong, but you can look them up. I mean, if there's things that you're interested in, you can follow BAE Systems, you can follow IBM, any industry that you're interested in. If it's natural sciences, just have a look, and you will be amazed at the amount of employers that all of a sudden spring out that you might be interested in. The pharmaceutical industry, and you can find really key people that could well point you in the right direction, and they might just be able to help you. I've had loads of complete strangers reach out to me and say, I don't know if you're the right person, but I was wondering if. So it's all about using it as an introductory tool, but don't bombard people. If they don't get back to you, just be polite and leave them be.
Right, okay, absolutely. And covering letters, have you ever used one in your career to get to where you are at the moment?
Yes, 1,000 times. And I actually remember my husband was looking for a job, and I literally did a mail hit for him at one stage, and I still use those as pieces of scrap paper. So yeah, they are so key to getting people to flip the page and look at what's behind it on your CV. And if you don't hit that right, then people might well not turn over the page.
Okay, no, thank you very much. So we've got a question already from IR saying, what's the difference between CVs and cover letters? Well, we'll look into it now then. So what is a cover letter? A document sent alongside your CV. So Helen, how does it differ from a CV then in terms of the cover letter?
You can a CV is pretty much a generic template of who you are and what you've got to offer. If you're being really clever, you will tailor it to every single employer that you're addressing. But if you're applying to 30, 40 employers, just changing your cover letter is a good way of introducing yourself. hello, here I am, and this is what I've got to offer the world, and this is why I'm applying to you. It's really making it specific to that employer, even that person. If you've looked me up on LinkedIn and you're writing a letter to me, you say, I see you've been at IBM for 25 years. That's amazing. And it gives you the chance to tailor your approach.
And so, for example, if I'm going through an application process and maybe find out that you're in charge of that program and you're going to be looking through the applications, do you think that it's quite intelligent to actually really try and tailor that and show you've done the research to try and identify who might be at the end of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I've even seen applications where people have met one of our students at an event, and in their covering letter they'll say, I met so-and-so at the school leavers event, and they were really inspiring. And for me, that's really good to know the impact that they've made. So any interaction that you've had with a member of staff for that company is really, really good.
Okay, fantastic. So personal introduction, going alongside your CV, it gives you the chance to explain to the employer why you're right for the job. So relevant skills. So that goes back to, Helen, your point there. I see a lot of people, and maybe it's my time at university, people would just blanket cover letters and just push it out. And at Pathway, so what we do, we might use a jobs board, for example, to advertise our roles. It's really interesting because it says CV, cover letter, but the amount of applications I get through that only have a CV attached with no cover letter, I just don't look at them.
No, it's an easy sifting. You can throw them in the bin. They don't care about you. They don't care about the company that they're applying for. And basically they've just wasted a stamp and potentially thrown away a 18 grand a year opportunity just by not putting in that effort with that piece of paper.
Exactly right.
I think of cover letters as like the movie trailer,
right,
or the back of a book cover, where it says what it's about, or the synopsis of a film. It's that trailer to really grab you and really pull you in and make you go, oh my God, I want to read this person's CV.
Brilliant. Okay, so that works for, maybe you could say, small businesses. And by the way, I was on we had Denise from NBC Studios on the CV workshop last week. So she was saying that they do use cover letters. So NBC, big company, they look after the Kardashian show, E! And all those different programs. So they ask for a CV and cover letter when they look for people to apply for their internships, graduate roles, apprenticeship schemes. And they just want to know, they've said, all about what you know about the company, what shows you enjoy, why you're passionate about it. It's got to be tailored. Whereas, Helen, big companies such as IBM, how does it work for you guys in terms of CV, cover letter application? How does it work?
Well, we don't use cover letters and we don't use CVs because we have thousands of applications. So we have the equivalent of the personal profile at the top of an application form. And that should be the equivalent of a cover letter. And I've even seen some people write it, dear so-and-so, best regards at the bottom. You should still use that in exactly the same way. Or the additional information box on an application form as well. Just think of how best to showcase yourselves, and if there's that personal profile at the top, that's where you put it in.
And how many words for the personal profile at IBM? I wonder, is it quite a lot you want there, or just a short snapshot?
150 okay. Words. And when we say 150, we don't mean 300. We don't mean 50. We mean getting towards 100, 150, actually show that you've put in the effort and that you really want to know. And also tell us, not only why you, but why the company you're applying to. Because as you say, with that company that you referenced just a minute ago, what is it that we're doing at the moment? Why are you interested in us? Why, what's going to be the thing that gets you up in the morning and gets you really engaged and makes you want to come to work? Why are you so proud? Why would you want to be one of us?
So even though you're not asking for a cover letter, you still need that in your IBM application somewhere, do you?
Yeah.
Right, okay. So it's all about tailoring to the company. But then again, what about if I don't have any experience? So a lot of young people, look, Helen, what I'm noticing, goodness me, I think it's only a quarter of 16 to 17-year-olds have a part-time job these days. Yeah. So a lot of schools and universities, you hear about it saying, don't have a part-time job, focus on your grades, and they end up
Okay.
they end up missing out potentially on the life skills. So if you are that young person who's just done grades and that's all they're doing, and they've got no other experiences, what I've done here, just a few points I've put down to try and link it in terms of your school and college into the subjects and why that's relevant to, let's say, IBM. Your part-time work, if you've got any of it. If you don't, webinars, insight events, work experience, networking with people like Helen and myself. You could maybe put down clubs and societies, volunteering, and just trying to link anything you've done into why that's relevant for the company and thinking about it personally. What would you say to that, Helen?
One of my colleagues can interview somebody and find out all of those competencies that would be shown at a part-time job in a candidate who has literally just dedicated themselves to netball. You've got continuity, you've got reliability, you've got dedication, you've got teamwork, all just in one sporting example. If you have done anything like that, if you've done Duke of Edinburgh, if you've done national citizenship, all of those show that you've really put effort into. If you've studied guitar, if you taught yourself guitar and you suddenly managed to get grade 4, grade 6 or whatever, brilliant. Karate, anything where you've religiously gone to something and you've got a result out of it, whether it's, you know, making a new bunch of friends or just finding the thing that gets you up on a Sunday morning. Building your own computer, I mean, that's another one that comes out quite often. People aren't getting the pocket money or the allowance that they might possibly want. They've had to take a shortcut to find a way to do things, so they've been innovative. And, you know, they've worked some kind of magic to get the parts, going onto eBay, sourcing things, just being inventive and different in your approach. And if you do that, then you've probably covered most of the competencies.
Okay, brilliant. So you don't necessarily need the work experience in technology before you start at somewhere like IBM. Is it mainly about those passions and competencies, like you're saying?
Yeah. Attitude and aptitude. If you've attended webinars, if you've been to a conference, if you've stretched yourself above and beyond just turning up for lessons at college, then yeah, that's pretty good start. If you've gone and done lots of research into something, if you've put yourself out there and you can, you know, show a result, what the situation was, what the task you undertook was, and the actions, and then it's always about the result. So you couldn't afford the computer, the actions that you took, and the result was you then got a working computer at the end of it. Or, you know, you wanted money to go to Ayia Napa over the summer holidays. Well, what negotiation did with your parents and which chores did you end up doing to enable you to get the cash?
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I noticed there, you dropped it in, but that was STAR interview technique that you mentioned there, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Is that something that you sort of assess? Because we did one of those sessions, I think this week or last week. Is that something you actually look for when you're across for the interview room?
Yeah, don't just tell me that you're a good communicator. Tell me a situation where you used your communication skills and the results that came out of it. If people weren't turning up for that netball training session, what action did you take and what were the results of your actions?
Right, okay.
Yeah, really, it's really simple way of framing a story. And if there is no outcome at the end of it, it's a futile story.
Yeah, exactly. You need the evidence, don't you? And I suppose, what about students, again, who always underplay themselves and say, oh, I'm not sure whether to mention this bit of work experience. What would you say about the 65 students who are on a webinar 2 till 3, technically in their own time today?
I would say sing loud and proud, because nobody is going to know if you don't tell them. There's a bragging thing, and there's quite a lot of bravado out there, and you know that some people talk themselves up. But if you list it, if you put dates and times and why you wanted to attend those things, what did you get out of it? You know, because it's all well and good reading 15,000 self-help books, but what was the result of reading those self-help books? So just make sure that you say what you got out of it, why you did it, and how you found out about it, maybe.
And just before we go on to the template that you've given us here for a covering letter, in terms of actually, no, I don't think we need to go into that detail. But this cover note that you've sent to us, then, so this, just talk us through how you've come about this and how you use it with your students.
So we do employability modules with movement to work students, and we were seeing a lot of them have got exactly those skills. They've got participating in regular sporting events and everything, but they were just never getting to interviewing stage because they just didn't know how to frame themselves. They didn't know how to get people to look at themselves. So my cover letter basically just goes over, tell me why you're interested in the company, tell me what you've got on offer, and then tell me, the nitty gritty. So you've done your Duke of Edinburgh, these are my UCAS points, and this is when I'm available. So you've got everything just in one hit that you could almost go over with a highlighter pen and just go, yes, 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 bing, turn the page. Because that's what you want. You need this hook to get people to read your actual CV.
And movement to work as one of the programs at IBM, isn't it? Where potentially it's more about you as a person than what you've got on a piece of paper in terms of grades. Is that right? Is a good diversity program for IBM?
Yeah, so they're generally young people that aren't in education or employment. We work with a couple of charities where they come into IBM, they do a mini assessment centre, and we pick them to work alongside our placement students, and we give them 4 weeks of work experience. So 4 days a week, they're doing a real job. And we've had people helping book rooms all the way through to building websites. And yeah, so it's quite interesting. There aren't very many places, but we have been really lucky in converting some of those people on that scheme to actual IBM employees. But the main point is to give them the confidence and the employability skills to go out there and find their next steps.
Okay, brilliant. I've got a question here. What is the best way to avoid sounding arrogant in a CV or cover letter when you're talking about your skills? This is a typical. What are you going to say? Factual. Okay.
Factual. Yeah, factual. State what you did, why you did it, how you did it. Don't claim to have owned a $5 million budget when actually it was 50p. Never put numbers down if you cannot back them up. Never say that you always opened the shop every morning when you only did it once. You can say that you covered for somebody, and it's got to be robust. So just be factual, not too humble, because you've got to actually take ownership of those achievements. But yeah, the more factual you are, and take the emotion out of it as well.
Okay, and I think you're right. But then again, on the flip side, students often downgrade what they do. So quite often I'm trying to encourage young people to say, go on, give that story a little bit of oomph, so to speak. But on the flip side, you've got to be careful and be factual. What would you say to my comment there? Do you think that's fair in terms of maybe being a bit British and reserved sometimes with what we're saying?
Oh yeah, you want them to tell. But you see, this is where you need the hook of what you've done on your application form, your CV, your cover letter, and then you need to draw them in enough so when you actually meet somebody in person, you can go, and here's the detail. Fine. So headlines, that big statement on your CV, great. But actually when you meet people, make sure you've got the full story to tell.
No, I like it. And that was the question that I had a brain moment earlier where I just went, but what stood out to you in the past at IBM for maybe an application that you've read, or maybe something that's not that significant but meant a lot to that person, and that's why maybe you brought them through? Are there any sort of stories or maybe an interview that you can share with us, I wonder?
I remember seeing an application form this year actually, and it was from a school leaver who she described herself as the skinny brown girl who actually got through to the climbing team, and it was just this very gentle but authentic, self-deprecating way of addressing such a great achievement. She'd got through to a really high level of climbing. And she didn't believe in herself, but she was saying, but hell yeah, I did it anyway. And I suddenly thought, oh my God, this is really good. And it was just, I think the authenticity is a key thing. Don't don't follow some formulaic book. Don't follow what your parents have told you. Oh no, that's not how to do it. No, it was never done like that in my time. You know, you have to be authentic, and you have to draw the reader into wanting to know more about you. And that girl I actually reached out to on LinkedIn, and I thanked her for such a great application form, because it really stood out. She came to assessment centre and she was everything that I hoped that she would be, and she got through to the next stage.
Fantastic. No, it's a good story. Authenticity is important. And in terms of this, just to go over this template, and Helen, I'm not sure if you're able to, are we able to share this template with those on the webinar or not? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So that's a Word version that they'll be able to just have the template and alter it how they want. Is that right?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Bit of an exclusive there for everybody, which we'll email afterwards. So the date in written format then, so not to go 2020, for example, 2020, yes, but in terms of the month, say July rather than 07.
Oh God, yeah. It just looks more professional. But the biggest sticking point I think most people will have on here is if you're addressing a female, how do you address them? Are they married? Are they Mrs? Are they Ms? Are they Miss? It's a minefield. If you can find that out, it's always good to get right. But it's a tough one.
And do you know what are the rules around MS, Ms? Does that mean that you're not sure if they're married or not? Is that right?
Yeah, Ms. dot is the most careful way if you don't know.
It's the safest way of doing it, is it? Yeah. Okay, interesting. I've just got a question here. What are the key parameters or points to be covered in the cover letter? What would you say is absolutely essential here? Obviously, we should know how to use the addresses in the top right and top left.
Yeah.
Anything else that's absolutely key here? I know that you put to reference. I wouldn't have thought many young people would put reference junior management consultant. That seems quite bold. What's the thinking there?
Well, that's one of our apprenticeship roles, actually, a junior management consultant. That's the name of one of our pathways. However, if you don't know the role that you're going for, leave that bit out. But the most important thing that you need to say is why you're interested in that company, whether it's Starbucks, whether it's Sainsbury's. You know, if you watched the Iceland advert and you were really impressed that they're trying to get rid of palm oil, or that you liked the way that they were the first employer to give the dedicated hour to elderly people for shopping, because they were. If you like those initiatives of a company, say it, tell them why. It's not groveling too much, but you just need to say why you're interested. If you tell me what IBM have done, and oh my God, I was really interested in that, is going to make you sound so much more interesting to me. You care about why you're applying. And then you need to say, if you've got any experience, if you've got something that's relevant, and if you made an impact, and how you did that in your covering letter.
Okay, amazing. And I've got a few more questions coming through here. And Catherine, I'm going to have to hand over to you just for a few minutes while I quickly sort out this quick phone call, then I'll come back on. You put there at the bottom, Joe Blogs. I like it, Helen. But in terms of your phone number and your LinkedIn, we've done the LinkedIn workshop, and lots of students have added me on LinkedIn, which is great. You mentioned, of course, like the headline of the CV, the headline of the personal statement. On LinkedIn, do you like, are there any top tips that you've got? Because I've seen a few students who are like, student X, young aspiring investment banker as their title. And I just think it just sets out from the start, right, this person knows where they're going and what they want. Have you got anything that sticks out to you that you like?
If you know a direction, hell yeah, put it on there. Because the amount of people that we have applying and they just go, oh, I just want a job. Okay, that's not going to help me. But if you think you know where you're going, then that is going to really help us inform that discussion. Brackets or anything else is obviously probably where most people are. Please let me get in the door is mostly what people want to do. But just try and tailor what you've got and what you've got to offer the world and why you think you're suitable for that role.
Okay, brilliant. Any questions on this particular cover note? Because we're going to move on to more of a fluid Q&A about covering letters, anything else, and maybe we'll look at those placements a little bit more in detail. Do raise your hand if you want to ask any questions about this letter, because you're going to use it, obviously. And just to be really clear then, Helen, so if I'm applying for Pathway or I'm applying for another SME or NBC Studios, every time I should treat that as a new application with this cover letter. The CV stays the same, but the cover letter depends on how I'm tailoring it. Is that right?
It's much easier to change the cover letter if you want to be really savvy. Change your CV, but make sure you've changed every single bit in it, because the amount of times I've seen Deloitte and IBM on the same cover letter, where people haven't changed things fully. It's really simple, silly mistakes.
What does that mean if that happens? Is it a fail straight away?
It will need a bit more looking into, and if I then spot another mistake where they've obviously just not paid attention, then it will be straight in the bin, because if you've got 1,000 and somebody hasn't even been bothered at this stage, then, as I say, it's throwing away a 18,000, 20,000 pound job. You know, why would you do that to yourself? So proofreading is just so important.
No, absolutely. Krishna, I'm trying to unmute you to ask your question, but just try and speak if you can. Rezwana, you've asked if it's possible to have a recording. Yes, absolutely. We'll send you the recording of this. Be by the end of play this evening. I always get called Christ in these webinars, but Chris is fine. Chris is absolutely fine. Krishna, are you going to speak to us or not? I did try to unmute you.
Okay, well, Krishna's typed in the Q&A and it says, do you have to include your home address in the cover letter? And I would say, well, why wouldn't you? I know some people are worried about being judged, about unconscious bias or conscious bias, but we're going to find that about you sooner or later anyway. So withholding somehow feels like you've got something to hide. If you have got something to hide, then I'm sure there are ways around that, as long as you put an email address and you cover yourself that way. But it is a standard format to include your home address.
Okay, good stuff. And I've got a question here from IR. IR, can we hear you? I have unmuted you. Talking is permitted. We can see your cat photo, but you're not speaking. Goodness me, what is going on today? No, okay, we can't hear you. Unfortunately. Catherine, are you there?
Yeah, just unmute.
Good stuff. Yeah, good stuff, Catherine. We're going to just move on to the Q&A section. I've just got to quickly do a quick phone call, then I'll jump back on. There's a few questions in the Q&A box there. Helen, if maybe you want to take those to start with, is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
Brilliant.
So in the Q&A section, we have Sam. He says, these days, a lot of communication is more informal. What advice can you offer in terms of pitching the formality of the letter? Is less formal email contact appropriate, or should it always be more formal, i.e. letter format? Always start more formal. It's a bit like turning up to the interview wearing a jacket. If it's hot, if your interviewer isn't wearing a jacket, you can always take it off. And then you meet them at the same level, but always try and bring your very best self in the first instance of contact. You only get one chance to make that impression, and so always try. Even if it's a sexy little startup company, wear a t-shirt and a jacket, and you should make your communication reflective of that approach as well. Hopefully that answers Sam's question. We have an anonymous attendee. Do you need a cover letter for university, or is that just apprenticeships and jobs? I think universities, you have an application route that you have to write your own personal statement. So it's similar to what you'd need in a CV or a cover letter. It's another way of just marketing yourself. So if you think of, if you were to write a movie trailer about who you are and what you've got to offer the world, then that is, that's really what university wants and what a cover letter should be. So anonymous attendee number 2, should you include the same content in the cover letter as in your CV, or is that too repetitive? Ideally, use other examples if you possibly can. Yeah, we do not want to be reading the same thing time and time again. And when you've got a competency-based application form that says, tell us your strengths as a team worker and tell us tell us how you communicated with people. Again, don't use the same example, pick different things. And if one can be a work example, and one can be a sports team example, and one can be a showing initiative and, you know, building your PC or cutting gardens or whatever. Yeah, try and mix it up as best as possible to make you an interesting person that somebody wants to actually interview. Anonymous attendee number 3 says, does spelling matter in a cover letter? Depends who's reading it, but if it's being read by me, then it's kind of a 3 strikes and you're out rule. Little typos, not good. Your message here to me is perfectly well done, so I don't think you're going to have any problems. But if you do have problems with grammar or spelling, Grammarly, there's a website called Grammarly. Use that, it's fantastic. Some people just can't. My dad has more letters after his name than I've got in my name. He can't spell for toffee, but his brain is like this big. So yeah, he knows to do those things. It should be about content, but equally this is your first chance to wow people. So get them wanting to read on, not looking for the next error. IR says, what do you do when your cover letter and CV get ignored and you don't get the job? If you've had any contact from that company, you know, like an acknowledgement, then write back to that that email address. I'm really, really proud of our team who go back to every single candidate that gets through, and they will give feedback if they're asked. And
I'm back. I can help you out here.
Hello, Chris.
Oh, sorry about that background noise. I'm not sure what that is. Would you advise referencing from the company's website using the exact words, e.g. experience, creative, inspire from IBM?
Yes, but tell me how you've done that. Tell me what, you know, how you've demonstrated that. So, you know, if you did an RA level and you did something really creative, tell me what your creative thing was. If you were failing at your A levels and you came up with a creative way to revise that actually turned things around for you, yeah, use that.
Okay, brilliant. And there's 7 more questions here. Then I want to try and get onto some placement stuff if we can. Should you include the same content in the cover letter as in the CV, or is that too repetitive?
We're talking of repetitive. We covered that one off already, Chris.
Oh, beg your pardon. Okay.
That's all right. You weren't here. Do IBM offer a degree or higher apprenticeships in business management? Yes, we do. If you're interested, go to our website and register your interest. When opportunities open, you will be contacted.
And from Elizabeth, I'm just making sure I'm not repeating things here.
That's right.
Is that fine? How long should you wait after sending an application in to follow up with an email?
A week.
A week?
Yeah.
So yeah. always follow up, even with a big company?
If you're feeling so inclined and you're really keen on that company, then why wouldn't you? If it's just an email, yeah, it's doing no harm.
Interesting. What do you do when your CV and cover letter don't get accepted and you don't get the job? What do you do, Helen?
You ask for feedback.
Interesting. What does that say about the young person if they say that?
They want to improve, they want to grow, they've got a growth mindset and they want to change things and they want to know how they can do it better.
And what about IBM? If I was to fail this year, can I reapply?
You can reapply in a year's time, so 1 application per year.
Okay, TJ, I'm just coming to you because you put your hand up. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Hi, TJ. Yeah, do you want to ask a question?
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to ask, does IBM have any work experience placements or apprenticeships around the legal field or law?
I think we've had 1 legal apprenticeship or 1 in that direction in the last 5 years. It's a small and niche field, so sadly not is probably the answer.
Okay.
No, but worth asking.
Sorry, thank you.
No, well done. What do you do when you're, oh, beg your pardon, is it worth keeping an idiosyncratic cover letter or keep it
short and simple. Personalize it. I had an application form from a savvy business student, and it made me want to read on. That's how he introduced himself. Greetings, I'm a savvy business student. I'm not suggesting that that would work for everybody, but the content that he put underneath that you know, the following material was very rich, and it showed that he had the right attitude and aptitude, and he'd done his research into the company, and he knew why he wanted to be an IBMer, and he knew what he could get from IBM as well.
Is that what you call each other there? But IBMers, is that right?
Yeah.
Does it help if you put that on the application? Again, knowing about the culture?
Oh yeah. Yeah, knowing what we're doing, knowing where we've come from, knowing how long a company's been around, knowing if you've changed yourself at all, were you an acquisition, or have you recently acquired another company? We've recently acquired a Red Hat, which is another massive company. I think it's the biggest acquisition in the world, at least in our sector. And you just go, oh my God, I'm glad you know about this stuff about us. So yeah.
And you could just Google that and find out and put it on your application.
Yeah, but don't cut and paste.
No,
because it is obvious. So, read and reword.
I'm not sure what's happening today. Not many people are putting up their hands. There's lots of questions coming in, but do put up your hand and you skip the queue. It's a little bit more engaging to hear you. Excuse me, my lunch is coming. What would you advise? Would you advise referencing from the company's website and using the exact words like we just said? Actually, oh goodness me, you guys, we've done that one, haven't we? Me going away has just ruined this webinar, hasn't it? For a few minutes.
That's right.
What happens once you hand in your CV and have nothing? Oh, for goodness sake! Shall I just go? Shall I go and make myself a cup of tea? Any more from these three?
This is more for work experience, but if you've contacted someone for work experience and they don't reply, what should you say in a follow-up email? Say something different. Offer them a different experience, maybe. Say, totally understand that you're probably very busy right now. Here's maybe what I suggest. I could do this. This is what I'm skilled in. This is what I want to learn. If you're not the right person, who else could I speak to?
Okay. No, good advice, Helen. A bit of an unusual one here from Lisa. For LinkedIn, should I use my work email to register, or can I change it later because I'm not sure at the moment? No. Get yourself a personal Gmail account that you will keep forever, that has a very sensible naming convention, not Lord Melchi or something stupid like that. Keep it so that it won't be embarrassing, and just write something. There's plenty of free email services are out there, so find one, stick with it, and ideally keep a separate one for job applications and LinkedIn, so that you don't accidentally mess things up. No. And also, if you're giving out your phone number on your CV and you're applying for jobs, when an unknown number phones you, don't go, yeah, what? Because, that's not going to work. What about, have you ever failed anybody for having a bit of a dodgy email, or maybe a really dodgy voicemail when they try and trick you into thinking that they've answered the phone?
No and no, but that's only because I'm not that close to the coalface. I see the application form. But I tell you one thing that I really do see, and a lot of people won't realise that you see it. So they've put in all their effort with their application form, with their cover letter, it's all beautiful. But when they are filling in the form that a lot of companies use, the online application form, they use lowercase letters for their name, for their street address, for the name of their school that they went to. They don't put attention to detail in the name of the course that they did. The amount of times I've seen, I've got great attention to detail, and then they've spelt psychology wrong or something. Don't mess yourselves up by doing something simple like that at the beginning. So use capital letters where they're supposed to be, especially for I am or I have. Don't use lowercase I in the middle of a sentence when it's referring to you. That's really going to put a few people's backs up.
Even though Word sometimes doesn't correct it, does it?
No.
You've got to go back in and make it a capital.
Exactly.
That's really good advice. Thank you. Two more questions before I want to ask some questions on placements. Could you apply with a job? Am I reading today? Could you apply to a job with zero experience?
Yes, of course you can, because you haven't got zero experience. You have done Duke of Edinburgh, you've done, swimming classes, you've done netball club, you've done something.
Yeah, or you've done reading, you've done being 90% attendance at school. You've done looking after you've done looking after your family members, your brothers and sisters.
I mean, the amount of young people that I've seen that haven't been able to do, extracurricular activities because they're a carer. Oh my God, what better experience have you got at managing a family budget, looking after your siblings, as you say, looking after elderly relatives, maybe going in and caring for your granny on the way home from school every day. Those are amazing things that a lot of people won't even be able to get their head round. So yeah, they're amazing experiences. So never ever put those on the back of something. They are upfront, loud and proud, and you should think, hell yeah, I've done that.
And it's all about that story behind it. Oh, I pick up my little brother from school every day, but it's the why. It's the fact that you're loyal to that. You're never late. You're always there. You're reliable. You got to think about the story, that star interview technique at the end of everything. The why, isn't it?
Yeah. If you weren't there doing that role, what would happen? And if the world falls apart because you weren't the one who always got the shopping in every week because your mum worked weird hours and could never, that's amazing. The contribution that you're making is fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. Do you IBM offer insight visits experiences for year 12 students? Yes, we do, through the Pathway program. So make sure that you check your emails. And we've got some initiatives happening this summer bearing coronavirus, where you can get involved in and come to the IBM office. So make sure you've done our survey, the links in the chat box, and check your emails on that. Is it wrong to use contractions in a cover letter, e.g. I'm instead of I am?
That's perfectly fine. As long as you know where to put an apostrophe properly, use apostrophes. That's totally fine.
Helen, do you have any advice for performing well in a job interview?
Think, understand who you are and what you've got to offer before you even turn up for the day. Smell nice.
Nice. Well, have you had some experiences where it's not been the case?
Yes. So sometimes it can't be helped because a student's living in a bedsit and they're cooking where their clothes are hanging up. So if you have got a interview outfit, just put it away in the cupboard. We do understand that there are some problems sometimes, but yeah, a bit of soap and water, please. Thank you very much. And conversely, not too much aftershave, because if you're in a really small meeting room with somebody, that can be a very long 20-30 minutes if you don't like the smell that's coming across. Even if it's lovely in a small confined space, it might be too much. So
there we go, guys. You heard it here first. Smell nice for your interviews. Look, Helen, Pathway students, they're proactive. They're on webinars. They're driven. They're going to smell nice, I promise. Okay.
Lovely.
No, that's very good. Good questions there, guys. I just want to flick it onto placements, okay, for the last 5-10 minutes or so, Helen. So
yeah, sure.
What is the advantage of me getting work experience or getting a placement at a big company like IBM in terms of me looking to get myself into that company?
Okay, so the thing about the School Leavers program is it's very much try before you buy. If you decide that you don't want to be an IBMer after trying it for a year, then you've got a year's worth of really great experience, but you haven't committed yourself to a degree program. You haven't, you haven't forced your hand, as it were. You've got the opportunity to carry on, but equally you can walk away without having that awkwardness. A placement is just a great way of seeing what works for you. you could have, I've seen university students who have been convinced that they were going to go into one certain direction. I had one girl who was convinced that she wanted to go into law, and she turned out that she wanted to be a web designer by the end of her year with us. There are people who just decide that one industry isn't for them, and actually they want to go into the charitable sector or something very different, but they realise that a large corporation isn't a good fit. So doing a year's placement gives you a chance to try, and that's just such a rich experience. And with a large company like IBM, you can get to see various different roles, different sectors, talk to so many different people and find out what their journeys are. And it's about being informed.
Do you get paid on your placement year at IBM?
Yes. We couldn't keep you for a year and not pay you. The only placements that we don't pay are for the ones doing the Movement to Work scheme, because that is literally just a 4-week work experience. But yeah, we pay our placement students, and they get paid the equivalent salary of somebody coming in on an apprenticeship.
Wow, okay. And there's research that I know about that on average it's about 70% of graduates end up, let's say I've got 100 graduates, 70 of those would have come through some sort of work experience or placement scheme. What's it like at IBM? Is it similar for you as well?
Some roles are up to that stage, but it's usually about somewhere between 50 and 70%.
Wow.
The thing about somebody who's been there on placement is they know whether they like it or not. We know whether we like them or not, and that gives us a really engaged employee right from day one.
I just don't understand, if you were to go to uni, why you wouldn't do everything you could to get a placement year. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. Because the students who come out of university without having done a placement year, with none of those employability skills, first of all, they get about a 4% increase in their final grade, which can be the difference between a 2-1 and a first. So that's a huge difference in the sorts of roles that you might be accepted for. So why wouldn't you? It does put it off for a year. It does mean another year that you're still, not getting on with the world of work. But, in the scheme of things, you've informed your choices, you've made conscious decisions about your direction. And because you have taken a bit of a break, you're going to be so much more focused in that final year of study.
Right, okay, brilliant. IR, over to you. Have you got a question? IR, that's a great name, but we can't hear you. And again, we can't hear you, so you missed your chance, I'm afraid. Couple more questions. How would you go about trying to get a work placement in the current climate?
Lots of employers are now looking to do virtual work experience. So there are some companies that I've seen that do almost an online research project, and they'll give you a business conundrum that you then have to go off and do some research about and come up with a solution. And sometimes that's working as a big team. So maybe there's 12 students working on the same project. So you have to then collaborate via different methods, such as tools like Mural and Trello boards, and using web conferencing to talk to each other and come up with the different ideas. So there are things out there. There are going to be less this year because of how things are. But yes, there are plenty of different work experiences out there that you can do and you can get involved in. Lots of universities sometimes have summer things going on as well, again, in the research vein.
Okay, fantastic. And we've just got one more question there, maybe before some final words from you, Helen, before I talk to the students about what's coming up soon. We've got the question there about what happens if it's really hard to get work placements in fields such as medicine and forensics. You're not a forensics expert, but any advice from that, Helen?
I would say they might not be able to offer you a full-time role. They might not be able to offer you a paid role, but more frequently now they are offering kind of like 4-day week of study and 1 day of going to a placement, and it might rotate around different employers. So you might do maybe a month's worth with one employer, so 4 whole days. It won't be a full year with one employer, but it might be a little bit of research with GlaxoSmithKline, and then another one with Johnson & Johnson, and just doing a small snippet of work with different employers, and because they can't necessarily afford to do it,
Right,
in
okay.
such space is difficult.
Last question then, before we let Helen get back to her normal day job, is do you think it's better to apply for a degree with a placement year integrated or without?
With. And if you find the perfect degree for you and it doesn't have an integrated placement year, ask. Because a lot of universities are very keen to increase the employability of their students when they leave. And the only difference it will be is that when you are completing your third year of university, you might not have all of your classmates that you've studied the previous 2 years with. So always ask the question.
Brilliant. Helen, it's been fantastic to have you on board today. Thank you so much. I wrote down a couple of actions there. Put movie trailer in terms of your cover letter. Make sure that you want to go and watch the movie, so to speak. I think that's a really good analogy. Authenticity in your applications and your CVs and what you're writing about, and to smell nice.
I'm going to be quoted on that forever, aren't I? That's just about bringing your best self, really.
Absolutely.
Don't leave the interviewer with the wrong lasting impression.
No, brilliant. Thank you very much for your time, Helen. I'm going to just do some admin with the students now, if that's okay. But Thank you very much, and speak to you soon.
Good luck, everybody.
Thank you. And we'll do follow up from this email in terms of just a quick survey, but just a bit of admin, guys, because we finished a little bit early. 4 minutes early. I thought time flies. But tomorrow we've got a special webinar where we're basically working with Capfinity, okay? And they are experts in helping you understand what you're good at. And we've got a free strengths profile with them, which basically means you get to do a questionnaire. It takes about 25 minutes. But then it's brilliant. All of my team do it, and loads of companies around the UK do it. And a lot of companies assess you on your strengths. So it's very good to know about what you're good at. And then it gives you a little report that says the 4 things you're really good at, the things that you're not so good at, and the areas you need to improve. It's a really good tool. If you're interested in that, email into student@pathwayctm.com. Bang, and just say that you're interested in getting onto the webinar tomorrow, 2 till 3 o'clock. And we will send you the questionnaire sheet to do beforehand. So you get loads of value out of that webinar, which will be really cool. Secondly is next week, Monday content. Somebody asked about next week. So the content will go out on Friday, so tomorrow, in terms of what's happening next week. I know on Monday, 2 till 3, we haven't put it in yet. Tomorrow it will go live for Monday. But we've got someone from Pret a Manger who's into management now, and he started basically at entry level. He's moved to lots of different roles, and now he's in management. And it's just basically by teaching you guys how to start in a role and where you can end up and how you get into management. So we'll look into management, which I think will be really interesting. So email into student@pathwayctm.com. If you haven't done the survey at all, you don't get our emails. The link on how to do that is on the chat box. Also, if you are looking into other events next week that are in the diary, check out our Eventbrite, because we've got 2 really quite good ones next week already in the diary. That's one with Accenture. They're a big technology company. They're still recruiting, by the way, for degree level technologists for this year. So if you're in year 13, get involved in that webinar. If you're in year 12 looking into technology for next year, get involved in that webinar, because then we can start helping you for next year's applications. Also, we've got insurance company Ed Broking, work in the city. Insurance will be really interesting to find out what's going on with coronavirus at the moment and how that's impacting them. So we're going to have a bit of a work experience sort of webinar there in terms of understanding more about the insurance market, so you can put it down in your CV as well. They're all on Eventbrite, which you can sign up to. Make sure you do our survey so we can speak to you. And if you want to get involved in that webinar tomorrow, student@pathwayctm.com. Just ask to be on it, and it's the first 50 spaces, and then we're going to fill it up. But well done for being on today, and see you guys again. It's not me tomorrow, it's Ellie, but I'll be back on Monday with Max, which will be quite a cool one at 2 till 3. Have a good one. Thanks very much.
Bye.
See ya.